There is someone in my life I love deeply who is struggling, and I know things that could help. I have the language, I have the training, I have done the work myself, and I can see a path forward clearly. And I have to let them find it themselves. I can educate, I can be present, I can share what I know and offer what I learned, but I cannot do the work for them. I cannot want their healing more than they already want it. I cannot make them ready. That is not fixing, and it is not indifference. It is the hardest thing I know how to do. It is loving someone all the way to the edge of what is mine to give, and then trusting them with the rest. That is not a graduation moment. That is not the healed version of the story. That is today, and it is the hardest version of the work I have ever done. Welcome to The Fan in the Window, interrupting what we inherit. I'm Tressa Bell. This podcast is about trauma, nervous systems, generational patterns, and the complicated, imperfect work of healing. Today's episode is called The Illusion of Control. And I want to say up front, this is not an episode about being a controlling person. It is an episode about what control actually is, where the need for it comes from, what it costs when we grip it too tightly, and what becomes available when we finally, slowly, and perfectly begin to let it go. Before I go further, a brief note. This podcast is not therapy, medical advice, or psychological treatment. I am not your therapist. This episode touches on anxiety, family dynamics, and the emotional labor of watching people we love struggle. Listen at your own pace. In the U.S., you can call or text 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. International resources are available at findthehelpline.com. You do not have to navigate this alone. Let me start with the origin of the need for control, because I think it is misunderstood. When we talk about someone being controlling, the image that comes to mind is usually power, dominance, ego, and selfishness. But for most people, especially those of us who grew up in chaotic, unpredictable, or unsafe environments, the need for control is not about power. It is about safety. When you grow up in a home where the environment is unpredictable, where you never know what mood you're going to walk into, where calm can become chaos without warning, where the adults who are supposed to be stable are themselves unstable, your nervous system learns something. It learns that if you can control the environment, you can prevent the bad thing from happening. If you keep your room spotless, maybe there won't be a fight tonight. If you manage your siblings, maybe the tension won't escalate. If you stay small and quiet and perfect, maybe you won't become the target. Control is not the problem. Control is the solution your nervous system invented for a problem it could not otherwise solve. My mother had dinner on the stove when we got home from school every day. I hated that we ate so early. There were rigid routines. Beds had to be made a certain way, chores done on a schedule, structure laid over everything like a grid that did not move. I understand it differently now. My mother was reaching for something she could manage in an environment that she couldn't fully manage. The dinner, the chores, the routine, those are things that she could hold, so she held them tightly. I felt the grip of those routines as a child, and as an adult, I did what a lot of us do with the things we hated growing up. I rejected them entirely. I don't make my bed. I don't keep a rigid routine around meals. Because I can. Because that is mine to control now. But here is what I also know. I took on my own version of control, just in different places, in different domains, with different things. The form changed. The function stayed the same. Because the nervous system that needed control did not disappear when I left that house, it just found new things to grip. One of those things was food. I want to name this carefully because I think a lot of people will recognize it and not have a name for it yet. When everything else in the environment is unpredictable, when you cannot control who is angry, when something erupts, when the next difficult thing arrives, what goes into the body can become one of the few domains that feels fully yours. Not always in a dramatic way. Sometimes it is simply the planning, the preparation, the ritual around feeding yourself and others that provides a sense of order when order is otherwise unavailable. Researchers who study the relationship between trauma and eating have documented this pattern extensively. Control over food is one of the most common ways the need for environmental control expresses itself in the body. That is not a diagnosis. It is information. And naming it is the beginning of understanding it. With my children, it showed up as fixing. When my daughters had friends who were mean to them, I wanted to step in. When my son faced kids who were unkind, I felt the anger rise in me that had nowhere useful to go. When they struggled with school, with a challenge, with anything that caused them pain, every instinct I had said, fix it, remove the obstacle, make it easier, do it for them if you have to. And usually I did, as much as I could. I understand now what that cost them. Not because I was wrong to want to protect them. That instinct is not wrong. It is one of the most human things a parent carries. But when we fix things for our children that they are capable of navigating themselves, even imperfectly, even painfully, we are sending them a message they do not hear as love. They hear it as, I don't trust you to handle this. We're also robbing them of the very experiences that build resilience. The hard things navigated. The challenge survived. The proof lived in the body, not just told, that they can do hard things. I learned this in therapy, and it was hard to understand, harder still to do. Because understanding something in your head and changing it in your nervous system are two very different timelines. I want to go deeper on what fixing costs children. Because I think most parents who do it, and I did it, believe they are helping. In the moment, it feels like help. The child is struggling. You have the ability to make it stop. You make it stop. But child development researchers have known for decades that struggle is not the enemy of healthy development. It is the mechanism of it. What researchers call productive struggle, the experience of encountering a challenge, sitting with the discomfort of not immediately knowing the answer, trying things that don't work, and eventually finding a way through it, is how children build the neural pathways for problem-solving, persistence, and self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, the belief that you are capable, that your efforts matter, that you can influence your own outcomes, is one of the strongest predictors of mental health and life satisfaction researchers have identified. And it cannot be given. It can only be earned. Through the struggle, through the trying and failing and trying again. Through the moment where the child realizes in their own body, not because someone told them, I did that. I can do hard things. When we remove that moment, even with the best intentions, even out of love, we remove the evidence. And without the evidence, the child cannot build the belief. Psychologist Martin Seligman, whose research on learned helplessness became one of the foundational studies in psychology, found something important. When a living being repeatedly experiences that their actions do not affect their outcomes, that struggle doesn't lead anywhere, that effort doesn't change the result, they stop trying. Not because they are lazy, not because they don't care, because they have learned through experience that trying doesn't work. Now, Seligman's original research was not about parenting, but the parallel is real and it has been documented. When children are consistently rescued from challenge, when the obstacle is always removed before they have to face it, when the parent is always there to fix what went wrong, the child learns something. Not that they are loved, that they are not capable. I have to say that plainly because I lived it from both sides. I fixed things for my children, as much as I could, for years. And my adult children depend on me more than they should. Not because they're not intelligent, not because they're not capable, but because I did not give them enough practice at it. I stepped in. I smoothed the path. I solved what they should have solved. And in doing so, I taught them, without meaning to, without knowing it, that challenges are for others to handle. That help will come if you wait long enough. That you don't have to trust yourself because someone else will do the trusting for you. That is not the lesson I meant to teach, but it is the one that landed. And now I am learning, slowly, imperfectly, to let them struggle. Even when I see the solution, even when the fix is right there, even when watching them figure it out is harder than just doing it for them. Because every time I step back, I am giving them something I couldn't give them before. The chance to discover that they can. It is not too late. That lessons can still be learned at any age, in any season. The interruption is always available. Psychologist and researcher Gabor Mate, whose work on the connection between trauma and behavior has reached millions of people, writes that the attempt to control the environment is one of the most universal responses to early adversity. When the child cannot control what happens to them, when the threat comes from the people who are supposed to be safe, the child learns to control what they can. Their behavior, their environment, the people around them, anything that creates a sense of predictability in a world that has proven itself unpredictable. Eckhart Tolle, whose work on presence and surrender has shaped how many people understand the illusion of control, describes the ego's need to manage the future as rooted in the fear of the present moment. In plain language, we reach for control over what hasn't happened yet because we cannot tolerate the uncertainty of not knowing. And for those of us who learned early that uncertainty meant danger, that not knowing what was coming next was genuinely unsafe, the reach for control is not irrational. It is the nervous system doing the math it learned. But here is what the grip costs. Exhaustion. Because you cannot actually control most of what you are trying to control. You can influence, you can prepare, you can plan, but the outcome, how other people feel, what other people choose, whether the thing you fear actually happens, that is not yours to hold. And the effort to try to hold it anyway is one of the quietest sources of chronic exhaustion that I know. It also costs relationships. Because the people around us, especially our children, feel the grip even when it comes from love. They feel the lack of trust underneath it. The message that says, I don't believe you can handle this without me. And it costs us the present moment. Because control is always future-oriented. It is always about preventing something or managing something, or preparing for something that hasn't happened yet. And while we are doing that, the actual life we are living is happening without us. The hardest version of this work is happening right now. My daughter is parenting her daughter, my granddaughter. And there are moments where I see something, where I know something, where the nurse and the mother and the grandmother all converge into one very loud internal voice that says, say something, step in, you know better. I am learning, imperfectly, slowly, daily to take a step back. Not because I don't care, because I care enough to understand that that is not mine to control. My daughter is figuring out her own way, the way I had to figure out mine, the way my mother was figuring out hers, with the dinner always on the stove at 4 p.m., with the rigid routines, with the grip that felt like love, even when it felt like a lot. 3 generations, and the work of this generation is to loosen what was inherited, to trust what we cannot control, to be present for what is actually happening instead of managing what might. Here is the distinction I want you to hold. Control and safety are not the same thing. Control is the attempt to manage the external world so that you do not have to feel the fear. Safety is the internal capacity to feel the fear and know that you will survive it. Control says, if I manage this correctly, nothing bad will happen. Safety says, something bad might happen, and I will be able to handle it. One of those is an illusion. The other is the actual work of healing. You cannot control what your children feel. You cannot control what your grandchildren inherit. You cannot control how the people you love respond to the world. But you can build the internal safety that lets you be present with them without needing to manage them. And that presence, calm, grounded, trusting, is the most powerful thing you can offer. Not because it fixes anything, because it models something. It shows them this is what a regulated nervous system looks like. This is what it feels like to be with someone who is not afraid of your feelings, who does not need you to be okay in order for them to be okay. That is the inheritance worth leaving. I want to offer you something to sit with this week. Think of one area of your life where you are gripping. Not the obvious one, the quiet one, the one you have justified so well that you barely notice it anymore. And ask yourself, what am I afraid would happen if I loosen my grip here? Let the answer come. Don't rush to fix it. Don't argue with it. Just let it be information. Because underneath almost every grip is a very old fear, and that fear deserves to be seen. Not acted on, seen. Because when we can see the fear clearly, we can choose what to do with it. And choosing is different from reacting. Choosing is the interruption. Before we close, I want to offer a grounding practice. This one is called box breathing. And I chose it intentionally for this episode because it is a practice in controlling only what you can actually control. Your breath, the count, the pause. Nothing else. If you are driving, keep your eyes open. Otherwise, let them close gently. We are going to breathe in a box. 4 counts in. 4 counts hold. 4 counts out. 4 counts hold. That's the box. Let's begin. Inhale slowly through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold gently. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold at the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more round. Let's do it. Ready? Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice what has shifted. That is not nothing. That is your nervous system responding to the one thing you actually control. Say this to yourself quietly. I release what is not mine to carry. I trust what I cannot control. And I am present for what is actually here. Take one final slow breath. Next week is the season finale, episode 12, What Healing Actually Looks Like, Interrupting What We Inherit. We've spent 11 episodes in the work, the roles, the grief, the apologies, the body, the survival mode, the grip. Next week, I want to talk about what all of it adds up to. What healing actually looks like when it's not a movie moment. When it's ordinary and imperfect and ongoing, and why that is enough. If this resonates with you, this is the work I explore more deeply in my book, The Fan in the Window. How our nervous systems carry what we inherit, and how we begin interrupting those patterns for the next generation. The book is available now on Amazon. A companion book is also in the works. Stay connected at thefaninthewindow.com. If this episode spoke to you, follow the show, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and share it with someone who needs it. Thank you for being here. This is The Fan in the Window, interrupting what we inherit. This didn't start with you, but you can interrupt it.